Welcome to From Beneath the Hollywood Sign. If you love old movies, Hollywood history, or the golden age of filmmaking, this is the podcast for you. Hosted by writer-producer Steve Cubine and actress-writer Nan McNamara. And now, Steve and Nan.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this preview of our next episode of From Beneath the Hollywood Sign, the podcast. Now, this episode is entitled Beginner's Luck, based on your blog, Steve.
Yes.
And the premise of this episode is actors who were nominated for the Academy Award for their film debut, essentially. And they were either nominated or they won the Oscar their first time out.
Yes. And in the podcast, we talk about some of the actors who actually won the Oscar for their film debut. But I think today we're going to talk about a couple that were nominated on their film debut, which in and of itself, phenomenal.
Yes, it is indeed. And the first one is this beautiful woman.
Yes. This, of course, is Sondra Locke. And, I hope people still know who Sondra is because she's such an important part of not only film, especially in the 60s and 70s, but she's also very important to me. I knew Sondra. I love Sondra. There's a great story of how I got to know Sondra. And it all boils down to my partner in life and career-wise, Cameron Watson. We ended up writing and producing a movie called Our Very Own back in 2005, which starred Allison Janney and Jason Ritter, Keith Carradine, Cheryl Hines, Beth Grant, all these great people, Faith Prince. And it was based on Cameron's childhood. He grew up in a small town in Middle Tennessee called Shelbyville, which was also the hometown of this lovely lady here, Sondra Locke. So, for Cameron growing up, Sondra was a legend. Anybody who made it out of that small town and became a movie star, that was unheard of. So he had a group of these really talented kids who all went on to careers in the industry, but they all thought Sondra had the key to it all. And one time, Sondra came back to Shelbyville to make an appearance for one of her movies, and they all just tried desperately to meet her, thinking she would share the secret of how do you get out. Well, that's what Our Very Own is based on. It's about these children, these teenagers in Shelbyville, Tennessee, in the late 70s, who try to find Sondra Locke during a horse show, because Shelbyville's known as the walking horse capital of America, in case you don't know.
I did not know. Thank you.
Well, and it's a beautiful, beautiful story. It's a coming of age. It was Independent Spirit Award nomination for Allison Janney. It won film festivals. But when Cameron first was developing it, he had a reading at Paramount, and a friend of his brought Sondra Locke to the reading. He said, the friend who's the wonderful director, Dan Ireland, Dan told Sondra, I'm not going to tell you anything about this reading. Just show up, come, and just trust me. Sondra had no idea that this story was basically a love letter to her, and how she inspired these kids. And that started a wonderful friendship between Cameron and Sondra. And then when we made the movie, I became great friends with Sondra, and we just had this wonderful connection. And of course, we even talk about Sondra today because for her film debut, which the beautiful and underrated, I might add, The Heart is a Lonely Hunter from 1968, Sondra received an Oscar nomination as Best Supporting Actor. And if you haven't seen this movie, it's so wonderful. It's also sort of a coming of age story about this small town girl in the South and how she learns so much from this deaf mute man who becomes a boarder in their house. Check it out. Such a great movie. But that's sort of Sondra Locke. And she's just was such an important part, I think, of Hollywood history because she was one of the first ones to segue into directing as a female. Not that she was the first, but she certainly made a mark there. But she also was one of the first people to ever take on a big studio and sue and succeed because of some misdealings involving maybe an ex-lover named Clint Eastwood, perhaps. But it's
Right.
a fascinating story, and she just was so brave and so smart and so strong, and she held her own, and, she got some justice for how she was, mishandled.
And unfortunately, she passed away not too long ago in 2018, I believe, right?
She did. So, God bless Sandra, but
God
she's
bless
one of those
Sandra.
talented she's in that rarefied group of actors and actresses who received an Oscar nomination on their first time out.
Wow. Well, we have another one that received their Oscar nomination, their first time out, and this one I think people will be familiar with.
Yes. Who doesn't know Scout from To Kill a Mockingbird, played by the incredible Mary Badham? And believe it or not, Mary Badham and Sandra Locke they have a connection, and they have a connection to me. Again, and it all goes back to the movie I was just talking about with Sandra, our very own. Um, you know, in our very own, there is a very specific, very important key scene with this mysterious woman who helps the movie's father, played by Keith Carradine, make a life or death choice, really, which changes everything about the movie. And it had to be somebody special. It had to be somebody incredible. And Cameron always had this dream that he wanted Mary Badham, Scout from
Mm.
Mockingbird, to play this part. But the only problem was we didn't know Mary Badham. We didn't know where to find Mary Badham. She didn't even have an agent listed with the Screen Actors Guild anymore. So we were at a loss, but we were determined. So what happened was I called upon as I always call, my fairy godmother of
Yeah.
Hollywood, Ann Rutherford. And people who know Ann probably know this. Ann Rutherford, if she doesn't know everybody, she can find anybody.
Wow. That's a great friend to have.
It is. So we told Annie that we wanted to find Mary Badham for this role. And Anne is a woman, she gets on a mission. She was determined that she was going to find Mary Badham for us. And swear to God, 24 hours later, Cameron Watson is on the phone to Mary Badham because Ann Rutherford called Bob Osborne, who happened to have a number for Mary Badham. And anyway, the rest is history. Mary came out of retirement after decades, and she does this incredible um, role in our film, which in a funny way kind of got her back into the acting world again. And, I don't know if people know, but she's currently on tour right now playing in To Kill a Mockingbird, which is Aaron Sorkin's take on it. And she's now, instead of playing Scout, of course, she's playing that mean, horrible, racist neighbor, Mrs. Dubois, which is such a change of pace for her.
It is. I mean, I always think of her as only playing
Yes.
lovely, innocent, not sweet necessarily, because
Yeah.
she certainly had some spunk in To Kill a Mockingbird, but,
Yes. But,
yeah, that's such a wonderful story that she's
and
now back
she's
doing that.
Mary is the most beautiful soul, and she so cares about, what her appearance as Scout meant to people. And she's constantly lecturing about race relations and so many important topics are still, going on today. So she's an incredible, incredible woman, an
Yeah.
incredible talent. And I'm just, I love that she is doing so well.
Yeah, I just had to show that photo, which I just love,
Atticus.
um, of course. And also from, This Property is Condemned, a little Tennessee Williams.
Yeah, she
You
plays
talk
Natalie Wood's
about
little
there.
sister. Yes.
Yeah, she's a wonderful, wonderful actress.
Since I'll just bring it full circle, which I don't know that a lot of people know this, but when Mary Badham auditioned to play Scout in Birmingham, Alabama, she was in the same room competing against Sandra Locke. Sandra
Oh my gosh.
also auditioned to play Scout, but Sandra was a little bit on the older side. So Sandra lied about her age, and she had her friend there who basically put freckles on her and tried to make her look younger. So it's funny that they would both be,
That they would both be, yeah.
and would both later go on to get Oscar nominated for their debut films.
Wow. I'm gonna try that freckle trick. Do you think that's gonna work on me? Make me
Little,
look
little
younger?
blush. Yeah.
Ah, Well, I'm excited to share this episode because I think the Oscars for both of us, for anybody who's a cinephile, who's a you know a film freak,
Yeah,
we love our Oscars,
you
and
do.
we have some great people to talk about in our next episode.
Yes, we really hope you'll check it out.
And you can find us wherever you find your podcast.